Friends, Dave Paulides, Canam Missing Project, copyrighted edition for our video channel. And yes, we're in here with Huck. She's taking a sleepy nap today. She's had a rough couple days. It's been real smoky in Montana, so she doesn't like the smoke. And she's been just lazing around here. Oh, just being a good puppy. Oh, you want belly rubs? Yes, I know. So she's going to stay in as long as she wants. She's a good girl. And then she'll probably go into the next room, pass out, and be her good old self. So I'm glad you're here. And this is a missing persons segment. And we are going to talk about two cases today that nobody has ever touched on before. And it's through our research that we've been able to find them. So, I gotta say, it's been a very rough few days here. And with the passing of Scott Carpenter, a trusted, loving, caring person that's been part of our team for over 12 years, and probably one of my biggest confidants on research, it's hurt us enormously. And Travis and Miranda, Scott's two grown kids, they've really helped me. I should be helping them, and I've been talking to them, but they've helped me. And that tells you the kind of kids that Scott raised. They knew I was out there just a couple weeks ago. We spent a week together. And one of the locations that we went to was near this lake. And there was a cemetery that he drove through to get to the research area that he was working in, and it was state land. So we went in there and we stopped and we looked at this view of this cemetery towards this lake. We both agreed, you know, it wouldn't be a bad place to spend eternity. And Travis told me just the other day that that's where they decided to put his dad's plot. Right there on that lake, next to his research area, with this great view. And we both kind of giggled and said, you know, that's where his dad would want to be. I've never been one to deal well with losing a loved one. But many times I've been the one who's been called for to kind of get the word out. When I was a policeman in San Jose, one of my best buddies was killed in a shootout in downtown San Jose. And I was the one to give the talk in front of 5,000 people in this huge church. And I can remember that the Lord up above gave me the courage and the ability to do it, because otherwise I never could have finished that tribute to Gordon Silva. And everybody I loved was in that audience too. Not an easy thing, but I keep being reminded that Gordon, my mom, my mother-in-law, Ben, Scott, and several others are all up there looking down. And you know what? I feel like I'm pretty dumb, because all of them up there now know all the secrets that we're all trying to understand down here. And I think that there must be some kind of code that they just can't whisper in my ear, hey Dave, this is really what's going on. I get it. We got to figure it out on our own. And we're trying. And the number of polite things that have been said about Scott in the last 2 weeks is heartfelt. We've worked together a lot, done a lot of conferences together, and I've never seen him get mad at anybody. Even though some people said some awful rude things to us, he would just laugh. The kind of guy you want to be around. So, it's my little update on Scott Carpenter today. If you can, say a prayer for Miranda and Travis. So today we're going to talk about 2 cases. First case is in Ontario, Canada. Again, cases you've never heard of. And I could go through and I could hit on the incidents that a lot of you write me about, but the funny thing is that 90% of the cases are people like you say, "Hey Dave, have you done this case?" "Yeah, I did." 90% of the time I'll say, "Yeah, there's a video online about it." Well, there's 550 about videos I've done, and they're all in this library on this channel. And all you need to do is, as you're looking at your screen, on the bottom left it'll say videos. If you click on that, it'll take you to all of our videos. And I wish you'd watch them. Otherwise, it kind of seems like I made them for nothing. So please check it out. And then also, when you're looking at your screen, on the bottom left, there's comments. Most of you have probably posted a comment. In every one of my videos, my comment will be the #1 comment out there. And I'll usually include the last 3 video links in case you've missed it, because many of you have been unsubscribed by YouTube. This is very frustrating. Everybody in my position is trying to build an audience so we can get the word out to the masses. And unless we're not educating more and more people, and just the same people get the same knowledge time after time, it's really not a successful endeavor. So you want to look to see that you're subscribed. And if you like the video, give it a thumbs up, because that helps us. Now, this first case involves a man named John Dick. He was 49 years old. He went missing September 1st, 1928. He was a war veteran, and he knew how to move around in the jungles, in the forests. He was an outdoorsman's outdoorsman. He was never married, had no children, but he was engaged to a woman in Belgium that he had met during the war. And he made his money by being a prospector. And in this area of Ontario, being a prospector is really the way to make money. He was in an area called Goganda, and he had essentially lived in that region for 20 years. So, Temiskaming Shores is right here, and I've written about this area before many times. There's a lot of disappearances there. This is Goganda. The area that he disappeared in was between Goganda and Shining Tree. Now, if you want to get your understanding, here's Sudbury, here's Timmins. Larder Lake, this is kind of the general area we're talking about. Got it? Now, this region is filled with water, lakes, creeks, rivers, swampy area. But there's a lot of gold and a lot of silver there. John worked for mining companies a lot, but he also worked for friends and himself. He knew the area like you knew your backyard. People said he's not going to get lost. Well, on September 1st, 1928, he went out with a work partner named Harry Jones. Well, they had already been out there for a while. It was August 31st that they established this camp in this area of the forest. And then they were going to go out on their own and kind of look for indications of silver and gold. Well, on September 1st, John woke up and he told Harry that he was going to go out and try to find some ore. And Harry stayed in camp. And they agreed to meet back in camp at dinner. Harry said he might go out later, he might not. Well, John never arrived back. So Harry knew the general area where John was going to go work. And Harry also knew this area like the back of his hand. And so he went out and he started to search for his friend. Well, they were a good 2-day hike from any civilization. So Harry was reluctant to go into town and waste the 2 days when he might be able to find his friend anyhow. Now this is the part where it gets very strange. Timber cruisers, that's loggers essentially, were working in an area to find new logs. And they stumbled across Harry. They described him hungry and exhausted, and they brought him back to Goganda. A day later, Harry was in infirmary, and he met with forestry and police officers and explained the area and the dates that John went missing and their purpose in being out there. And he got out a map and he showed them. He explained that John was carrying an axe and a compass, but that he wouldn't get lost. He knew how to use the compass, and he said, you know, even if he was partially lost, he had the compass with him. He would get himself out. And the area they were working was an old fire burn. So, burned all the trees down, but the vegetation had grown up significantly since the day of that fire, which was many years earlier. Harry said that John went out and woke up that morning and had complained over the last several days of heart issues. Didn't explain exactly what that was, but to many people that may mean he had indigestion in his chest or stomach, or it was very vague. Well, police and forestry officials from Goganda and Sudbury had already responded into the area, and they set up grids. And then they got local prospectors to assist the Ontario Forest Department with their efforts to find John. Now, Ontario also did something that was pretty phenomenal for 1928. They had one forestry plane, and they had it respond to Goganda, and then they were going to put the plane up to help look for John, which for 1928 was pretty good. Well, they said that the plane got up in the air near the search zone, and it immediately had engine problems and had to be grounded. Now, why is that interesting to Dave? Because there's been a number of times where I have written about searches for people, and there's been crash of airplanes, crash of helicopters, engine troubles that shut down cars, anything mechanical. So to hear this happen kind of falls right inside that research realm that we've identified. So the area of the search and rescue was Shining Tree west of Goganda, and I showed you on that map, Shining Tree is this little tiny community west of Goganda, and even now it's small, but imagining in 1928 it must have been just a house. And that area is still known today as being rich in silver and gold. Unbelievably, the search went on for 10 days. In 1928, a normal search would last 2 to 3 days. John was a local man of Goganda that everybody knew, everybody loved. He tried to help people, and you can see how much the city poured out its affection for John. They found nothing. On October 2nd, so he went missing on September 1st. October 2nd, they wanted to get another search and rescue in before the winter started. So they searched off and on between October 2nd and the 15th. Another long, lengthy search, and they again found nothing. Now, very briefly, 30 miles east of Goganda is Temiskaming Shores. Many, many strange disappearances there. An area of swamps, lakes, creeks, etc. So Temiskaming has a big lake associated with it. I wrote a lengthy story in my books about a young boy who disappeared there, and his parents actually had gotten a hold of me, and a truly unbelievable set of facts that surrounded his disappearance. His parents were crushed. So that's story number one. Story number two, a little closer to our time. 1950, August 14th. In an area that I know quite well, because I've spent a lot of time in Grays Harbor County, Washington. Don't talk about young girls very much, but every once in a while we do. Girl's name was Shirley Lonborg, Shirley Lonborg, 2 years old, missing August 14th, 1950 at 5 p.m. Why is 5 p.m. important? If you haven't followed me, you should know that 4 p.m. is the optimum time that people go missing. Don't know why. Maybe it's because, like in John Dick's case, they were supposed to meet at dinner, so 5 or 6 o'clock, that would have been the time he would be reported missing. But Shirley was playing out in front of her parents' home in a very, very rural area. And she lived with her mom and dad, Mr. and Mrs. Lloyd Lonborg, and they lived outside of Oakville, Washington. She reportedly was dressed in very light clothing because it was a really warm August day. Now at about 5 p.m., Mrs. Lonborg realized her daughter was missing. So she called for her family members to come out, and she also called the grandparents who didn't live that far away. And they searched the yard, the street, everywhere around there looking for her. The idea that she was abducted by somebody in a car or neighbor or something wasn't really in the plan, because she would have heard anybody drive up. And it was such a rural area, nobody even came out there really in the 50s. Well, after an hour or so of searching and not finding anything, they called the Grays County Sheriff's Office. And the deputies in about an hour responded. And immediately the first deputy on scene started to call for reinforcements, because they could see that they were going to need a lot of people looking for Shirley. This area was rough. Now right here, this is Oakville, Washington. Oakville's right here. Residence is over here. Highway 12 kind of goes up towards Elma, and then you go out towards Aberdeen. I know this area quite well because I've written about many, many stories of people who have disappeared out here. Huck, what did you do? What did you do? Did you touch the camera? You're the executive producer, you can do that. Yeah, whatever, Dad. So, the Grays Harbor deputies get there, and in the 1950s, I can't imagine they had more than 3 or 4 deputies on duty then, but they got a majority of them there. They started searching, and then they started calling for Shirley's name. They weren't getting a response. They asked her parents if she had ever done this before. No, she's 2 years old. So, deputies also did a very smart thing. They called for canines coming from Kings County. And that would take them a couple hours at least, maybe 3 hours, to get to the scene. But many of the locals in the mountains around the Lonborg house had been responding as well. And by 10 p.m. that night, they had 200 people searching for Shirley. And looking at how rural that is, that's an unbelievable number. But we've talked a lot about these rural communities really stick together. When somebody needs help, they drop everything and go. Which is really the way it should be. In America, in Canada, we all need to support each other. So they get 200 searchers in the field at 10 o'clock. It's just nighttime now. And they're walking through the woods calling her name. And at about 11 o'clock, it starts to rain. and it starts to rain really heavy. It was reported that during the night it rained an inch in this area. That's a lot when you have a 2-year-old girl dressed in light clothing. If I would have been her parents, I would have been deathly scared. So the canines get there at about midnight and they start searching. And both canines, they didn't go together. They took up different routes, different locations, and they both ended up at Shirley's grandparents' home. Now, none of the articles stated exactly where, just that it was nearby. Well, she wasn't there. And in fact, nobody was at the house because the grandparents were with the primary parents at their house. So they were a little mystified that they weren't finding anything. And they weren't getting any callbacks from her while they were in the field. So the canines came back, went back to Kings County. And remember, they had 200 searchers there all night looking for her. At 6 a.m., reinforcements started to arrive from Thurston County Sheriff's and Search and Rescue's team. And they started to pull the people off the mountain that had been on it all night. They needed to go home and sleep. Well, they put more people in the field. More people had heard about the search from other areas. People from Aberdeen started to arrive. And they were in the field at 6 o'clock. August 15th, 8:20 a.m. 2 searchers from Aberdeen were working outside the primary grid area. Now, what does that mean? So, when you have a 2-year-old girl, boy, here's the residence. You do a 2-mile radius. You put a circle around that residence, and that's your primary search zone. 2-mile radius from where the girl was last seen. Well, one big problem with that is if you followed my research, you know that there's a lot of kids that are found way outside that 2-mile radius. And I don't know why, but 2 searchers were at the 3-mile point. And they were near a town called Montesano. Well, I looked on a map, and it looks to me like it's 5 or 6 miles. But they said 3, so we'll stick with 3. But the men that found her were Cliff Ramsey and Leroy Harday. Now, they weren't just 3 miles. They were 3 miles plus a steep, that was their quotes, very steep hill that they found her on top of. She was alive. They put a coat around her, and they brought her back to the home. At her home, they had a physician waiting, and the physician stated she was suffering from exposure. Makes sense. She was transported to Alma Hospital, and she survived. Now, let's get back to Ramsey and Harday. They meet with the sheriff of Gray County because he wants to know, how did she get out 3 miles, number one? And what did you say about a steep hill? What the men stated was that they found this hill, and they thought that they saw tracks going up the side of it. So they get onto all 4s, and they said they could barely get to the top. And there she is at the top. The sheriff says he was uncomfortable with that because he didn't think that after walking 2-3 miles that Shirley would have had the energy to make it up this steep hill. And why at 2 years old would you go up a steep hill? Doesn't make sense, right? Well, he said his investigation was going to continue. Never heard anything more about that, and I did a lot of research on this. I'm not sure what he did, but in the back of his mind, he was probably wondering what really happened. And if you remember, this is in a very rural area. There aren't a lot of homes. There aren't a lot of people. There is a lot of paranormal activity, though. I'll give you that. So, Ramsey and Hardy were heroes for finding her. Let's put it that way, because everyone else was within this 2-mile radius. Now, I got to give them smarts for thinking outside the box and looking outside that zone because, like I've stated, this has happened too many times to be just random circumstance. Now, rescuers stated that it rained 1 inch while Shirley was missing. So let's think about this for a second. Small children, very thick, lush area. They're going to be moving very slow at 2 years old. Tripping, falling, whatever. And then what do kids do when it turns dark? All kids find a little cubby somewhere. A lot of kids will find a log and sleep with their back to the log. And it's nighttime. You go to sleep at night. That's what they were trained to do. And that's what 99% of the kids do who are missing. During those nighttime hours, they're asleep. There's a good chance, unless you scream really loud and wake them up, they're not even going to hear you. But kids wake up early. So she was probably moving at daylight, 6, 5:30, something like that. Which means she covered that 3 miles in a lot shorter period of time than what you're first thinking. So 2 canines can't find her. Remember that. Part of the profile. It's found outside the primary search and rescue grid. Got to remember that. 200 searchers working through the night. Everybody calling her name. Nobody finds her. Nobody wakes her up. So my question to you, especially to the people who have followed me for a long time, was Shirley even in that search zone when they were looking for her? That's question number 1. Question number 2, as the sheriff was thinking, did somebody help Shirley up the side of that mountain? And then why would Ramsey and Hardy search that specific mountain for that girl? Now, let's get it straight. I'm not in 1% indicating Ramsey and Hardy played any part in this at all. Abducting her or something. No. I'm not saying that. A lot of times people talk about mind speak. And it's hard to say exactly what it's coming from, but there's a lot of Bigfoot researchers who say they get mind speak. It's like Bigfoot talks to them in their head. And then there's other people that said that aliens mind speak and give them ideas in their head, tell them to go do something. Sometimes it's subliminal. Is that what happened to these 2 men? I don't know. But very few people actually talked about it after this. But once you understand our profile points, once you understand the distances traveled, once you understand the rarity of a girl like this being found, it's rare. Especially outside a primary search zone in very rugged, thick forest, and she's not saying anything. Very rare. The Lonborgs are very lucky they got their daughter back. But how many other kids do you know of that live in rural areas that are playing in their yards every day? That's what kids do. How could you protect them? If it was me and I was, let's say, a forest ranger, I'd put a fence up around my house with a big old dog. And I'd say, yeah, surely you can play in the backyard with your big old dog. That way if a mountain lion or bear come in, that dog's going to make a lot of noise and let mom and I know that something's going on. Just saying. But kids are kids. And a lot of people, when you're young and you're having a family, you don't have the resources to maybe spend money to put up a big fence. So I get that. But my job is to let you know what I would do with the knowledge base I have. And being in the mountains, I would not let my kids play in the front yard. In Bailey, Colorado, Jim Myers has a Bigfoot store in Bailey. It's a great store. Try to get there. But in that Bailey area, elevation's high, 7 or 8, 9,000 feet. And there's been a couple of instances where kids have been playing in their yard. And in one, Dad heard just a quick cry from his boy, small boy, and runs outside and sees a mountain lion with his boy's head in the mountain lion. Oh my God. Well, needless to say, he got his boy back from the mountain lion. But this wasn't the first time. There's been a series of mountain lion attacks across the United States on young children. Mountain lions are predatory animals. They're looking for an easy meal. They're not going to take on somebody like you or me. But a small child, well, yeah, they're going to take them on. So, be aware, folks. And lastly, when you go to a national park or a state park, this is not fantasy land. There can be predators sitting right in the bush right next to you and you would not know. Do not let your kids out of your sight ever. Always make them hike on the trail in front of you, not behind you. They go to the bathroom in the woods, you stand next to them. Sometimes people even say, well, maybe I should tie a rope around them. I don't think that's a bad idea. I'm sorry. That's just me. I mean, yeah, you got to give your kids a little bit of freedom as they get older, but like I've told you these stories, kids can disappear instantly. And the thought of not getting your child back would be something you don't want to live with. So on a safety aspect, don't let your kids out of your sight when you're in the woods. State, BLM, U.S. Forest Service, national parks. I don't care where. So, those are our 2 stories for today. I want to thank you very much for being here. Going back to the subscriber portion, make sure you're subscribed. If you like the video, give it a 2 thumbs up. And remember, under that first comment I told you about, you're looking at the screen on the bottom left, there's all these comments. Under my first comment, you'll see links to our last 3 videos. If you haven't watched them, pick them up, please watch. And we have 500 plus videos out there under that video notch on the screen. And then you can follow me on Twitter at David Paulides at Canam Missing. I'm also on Truth Social under the same thing, David Paulides at Canam Missing. I post on there every day. And please give us a chance. And you can buy my books at our website, NA like North America, NABigfootsearch.com. You can get our DVDs for the movies and our books. Don't go onto Amazon and pay like $75 to $100 for one of my books. They're $25 on my site. Videos $20, DVDs $20, hard copy, and we'll get them out to you quick. So, be kind, keep a smile on your face. When you're outdoors, at the store or at a park, smile at people. It doesn't cost anything. And we need to smile more at each other. Be a closer group. Thanks for being a villager. Huck just moved over 5 feet. You take care. Paulides out.